As usual, this is an event that is co-sponsored by the Iowa City Public Library and Project Green. And I would like to especially thank Beth Fisher, who made the first announcement and introduction. She does all the videotaping and videocasts, and all of these tapes are available in the nonfiction section of the library. They are played periodically on their Channel 9, Channel 10, television series. And you may check these tapes out, take them home, and enjoy them in the comfort of your home anytime that you wish. I would also like to thank some special Project Green people here today. As always, our forums are not complete without cookies and refreshments. And those people that are very responsible for the cookies, Betty Can, Linda Meredith, Diane Allen, Cindy Parsons, Betty Oglesby. And the flowers on the tables are done as usual by our expert flower arranger, Bernie Knight. I would also like to say that I am just standing in today for Melanie Haupert, who unfortunately is in Florida. But she is Project Green's chairperson of the Sunday Garden Forum series. Would you please put on your calendars the two others on our 2008 schedule? March 2nd, it will be the common landscape trees of Johnson County, the winners and the losers. And our presenter will be another person that you have loved to listen to in the past, and that is Mark Vitash, who is our DNR forester located in Iowa City. On April 13th, Proven Winners, Annuals That Make a Difference. And this is presented by a representative of Proven Winners out of Illinois, Sandy Westerhaft. She will discuss ways in which you can not only select the best annuals for your garden, but how you can arrange them so that they're complementary in a container. You love to have flowers that bloom all summer long, and so these Proven Winners will be something that you should put into your file after that April 13th. I think that Beth alluded to our format. The first hour we will be listening to our presenters, and as you are listening, please jot down questions that you have that you would like to ask them, because this is videotaped. We cannot pick up your questions as you would like to speak them from the floor. So we will collect your written questions in the intermission, the break, and then we will read your questions from the podium up here during the question and answer session. So this is what you came for, today's presenters, Lee Zieke and Lindsay Lee. And they have chosen as their title for today, Garden Methods and Messages, a State of the Garden Address. We will expect to hear their insightful perspective on how and why we garden, including tips on how to put plant materials together in a pleasing fashion. We will also listen to them give us maintenance strategies, and we hope that the more maintenance becomes more low maintenance every time we wander into the garden. So maybe they'll show us some shortcuts as well. And of course, we're always waiting to hear about garden guides to a pleasing landscape design so that we too can be artists in our own gardens. Lee and Lindsay have owned and operated Willow Glen Nursery, a specialty perennial flower nursery located in a rural scenic area north of Decorah, Iowa. And this has been in operation since 1986. They have blended their backgrounds of fine arts and environmental education with practical garden experiences for 25 years together. The two have become familiar to many Iowans through their appearances on Iowa Public Television, the Perennial Garden series with Karen Strobing. Besides being in demand as speakers throughout Iowa, they are also speakers and establishing seminars in our surrounding states. And I hope that they enjoy coming to Iowa City as much as we enjoy having them here. So let us be prepared to enjoy an afternoon with Lindsay and Lee.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, you Iowa City gardeners have come a long way with this library from the first time that we gave a talk here. And this is our first time in this new facility, and isn't this grand? So congratulations to you and your library here in town. And also congratulations to Project Green, in that I learned today that it was established in 1968, which makes this its 40th year. And I think that some of the wonderful things that have happened around this town are a result of kind of the efforts of that particular group. And certainly that group that has gone on for these years is always looking for new blood to help. So if you want to know more about their activities and their plant sales, I'm sure that at the break today that some of those ladies would love to visit with you.
And of course, we love coming to Iowa City to talk with. Lee and I both went through the filter of Iowa City back
That's right.
2 years ago, and love this town, and always love to come back and see it.
Though I am tempted to check out the tapes of our earlier talks just to see what we looked like back then. And like some of you, I mean, we've all been gardening for a number of years now, and it's fun to kind of see what we used to try to do and what we do now, and how maybe we've changed and accommodated both for what our yard sizes are and what our physical abilities are. So we're hoping today to, you know, kind of this time of year we always need to get together just to remind ourselves that yes, gardening season is coming, even though it was 9 below when we left our house this morning up in Decorah. But so February support groups for gardeners are a good thing. Do you know how to make all this stuff work? Oh, good. Beth is great.
Way ahead of us.
I like to start this out because my name is Lee and I am a plantaholic. And I feel like I am with some of my own here. And it is what makes us do what we do, because of having the chance to work with plants. And for those of you that haven't been to our place, we run this little nursery and have for over 20 years now. We are in Northeast Iowa, a little bit off the beaten path. I noticed, Lindy, coming today, many people kept saying, "Oh, did you get out on your roads?" And it's like, well, it's not that bad up there in rural Northeast Iowa. But basically, we have a little retail nursery there. And it's been very fun over the years to establish it in that we get to grow what we like to grow. When you're your own boss, it's like, well, geez, let's do some stuff that we like and enjoy. I'll let you run the buttons now.
So we're a little bit atypical in the way nurseries run these days, because we grow a lot of our own plant material, and we grow most of it out in a way so you can walk the paths. Here we go.
We're open from the 1st of May till the end of September.
There you go.
And I think one of the reasons that people like to come and visit us in that we have a lot of fun talking with our customers. So when you come, you get to talk to us mostly, not employees that we have. And we've always commented that we learn as much from the gardeners who come to us as what they take home when they visit us.
Here we go. And beyond the typical garden center, we have fairly extensive gardens that you can come walk, and what is it? Experience is the best teacher. So you can see a full-grown plant in the flesh, and that tells you so much more than a book or a little plant tag can ever tell you. We're pretty passionate about that whole idea that we give you a garden to look at, and we can stand there and talk about this plant. We can tell you that we cut it back twice a year to get it to look like this or whatever.
Or if you
whatever
read
the
on the label that it says it gets 6 feet tall and you think, oh, I could squeeze that into this little space. But no, when you see it in our garden, and yes, it is 6 feet tall, I do feel like you'll go home with a little better notion about what you need to prepare for. Uh-oh.
hit it again.
Uh-oh, we need Miss Beth.
Hold on once.
Thank you. Now we have a kind of a
Talk amongst yourselves.
we have a kind of a tale, you know. We always bring our own slide projector to talks because sometimes when they say, "Oh yeah, we have one," we have one.
Yeah. Well, we'll see.
I think we're going backwards.
Yeah.
Well, go forward, see what happens. All right, I'm gonna take that slide out and we'll skip it. Talk amongst yourselves, pay no attention to the,
To the woman behind the curtain.
okay, forward.
All right, you can stay there.
Yep.
Okay.
I do think that what intrigues us about gardenings as individuals is that it is a connection to the natural world. I mean, it gets us outdoors, it gets us looking, and the possibilities are endless that way. But the fun starts when you can do things with color, you can do things with texture, and also the incredible part about gardening is that it changes through the season.
This is something that we've come to love the effect of. There's probably many of you in the audience that have the same privilege. Now that we've gardened in one spot for 20 years plus, you kind of have this idea, oh, we're going to do a garden out there. And frankly, I can't believe what's happened in 20 years. It's been quite an amazing ride. So this is something we've begun to really celebrate, is this, both the seasonal change and the change over the time from year to year.
So from spring to this is more midsummer, early fall.
You know, that's a tremendous progression. We're dealing with
Till
that
now.
progression even right now with the extreme cold and the layers of snow. That layer of snow is absolutely, we all know, is great for those roots in the ground. They're all insulated. They don't feel this sub-zero weather. But
Sorry, I'm having fun
she's
here.
rearranging. The sign says not to.
Just says not to turn the podium.
Ah, okay.
But the other thing about change is that it changes from year to year. And like Lindy said, you know, from year 1 to year 5 to year 10, your garden isn't going to look the same. And we kind of chuckle to ourselves in that, you know, some of us all have that perfectionist tendency. And when we decide to start with a garden, you know, you plan it out and you want to see what goes where and you've got it all sorted and it should be great. Well, we all know that it is going to change. And it isn't going to be exactly the same. So you have to kind of allow that to happen.
That is what I call the only constant, is that things will
Yeah.
evolve. Perennials don't sit still. They grow, expand, some die, who knows. But there's always that change factor, and you don't have total control of it. You know, it has to do with the weather. It has to do with your stock plants. It has to do with the competition from the neighboring plant. So all these things are variables. There's a lot of them. And we're going to take you through a little progression of a recent garden we built back at the farm. Here we started with a fence just because the greenhouse was a little unsightly.
Well, and this is where you start with all the big ideas.
Oh yeah. I actually kind of penciled that out on paper, but roughly. This is an early, you know, it's just starting to grow up, but it's first year, filling in a little bit. But the real results, they always say, sleep, leap, or sleep, creep, and leap. They takes a perennial garden about 3 years to really explode and fill in. What we shoot for anymore, starting a new project, is this idea of 100% coverage. Maybe it's because I propagate a lot of my own plants, but I don't leave room for a plant to get its full size right, in 5 years anymore. I kind of want them to be full next year. So plant a little thick, and what I find is that over time, a really dense planting is a lot easier to care for.
Because theoretically, 100% coverage means low maintenance. But because we decide as kind of the keeper of the garden that maybe you want a few less coneflowers here, or a few more spaces for this, or a little bit of space around the daylily. So we're the ones who are adding the changeability in our gardens by how we work in them.
Now, Lee and I have both always been huge natural history buffs. In fact, Lee professionally worked as an interpretive naturalist, but you go way back to family vacations as a kid, and we got dragged through state and national parks all the time on our summer vacations. I just loved the outdoors all my life. I think Lee would agree that's the same for her, and that the place I think we go most to look for inspiration in our gardens is the natural world. So from you in Iowa City, I know there's some prime examples of native prairies around here. If you want to see some new ones come up northeast Iowa, we've got Hayden Prairie and a couple little postage stamp gardens. But these things, this is an undisturbed prairie site. They're rich with plants. They
got the 100% coverage
got
thing.
the 100% coverage down. This is a little bitty prairie that our county conservation board owns, and it's so thick with plants you hate to step anywhere. If you're there during any of the blooming season, from spring till even late summer, it's just you tiptoe through it. You follow the deer trails and things because you just don't want to step on too many flowers, as you go through there. So that's a remarkable thing, and that's the plan. And you can interpret that into your own gardens. This is back at the ranch, and it's similar plants that we don't have to be total purist about it. Some of those are selected varieties, but you can get that same feel using similar plants, and just go for that design theory of 100% coverage. This is a shot up in our woodland. This is undisturbed. I suppose at one time in its history it was grazed, but that's how to give you a shady garden example, this is the forest floor. That's wild ginger and maidenhair fern and such. And we can substitute other plants, but in our own gardens, some of the shade plants cover ground really nicely, and 100% coverage is easier to attain. But we love to really carpet the land with plants.
So then you can include water, kind of natural water features, and this has become more popular in the last maybe decade, to bring your own interpretation of that into your gardens. Be it a pool with a variable size liner or something a little more,
I thought I heard that knot drop.
more formal. Do you know how she did that? So basically, it's to have a place to kind of draw for inspiration and then utilize that. Don't think you're going to copy it, but certainly pay attention to the aspects that exist there, and then how can you bring those into your gardens. So somehow you have to become comfortable with how much control you want to exert and how much you need to let go. And so there's this psychological balance point where you're comfortable with your gardening, because it satisfies you, and maybe what you do and what I do is different, You know, I may be really neat and want it all to look good, and you may kind of just let what happens happens. And really, all of that is correct. That we're making ourselves, you know, it is really for our own enjoyment, and if it is enjoyable, we're doing it right. I hate to think that some people spend time in their gardens only with that critical eye saying, I should be doing this, I should be doing this, that you really need to have time to just embrace what's happening and enjoy it. One year, Lindy and I had absolutely fantastic hollyhocks. And hollyhocks are a plant that, you know, they bloom tall. Typically, you know, it's June, mid-June, late June even up in Decorah. And that's when we get the big thunderstorms, and so it usually never fails that at some point you get the big storm that will knock them over. Well, this one summer for us, it was absolutely perfect. And so knowing that that might never quite happen again, we made kind of a pact with ourselves that said every dinner, every evening when we ate dinner, we carried our meal out, set the chairs by the hollyhocks, and just reveled in them being there. Because, you know, like you say, it never really has been quite as good a show as that one summer. So you need to take time to enjoy what does seem to work, because you cannot assume that that will always be the case. Because the summer can be different, you know, it can be rainy, it can be wet, it can be dry, it can be hot. So really take the time to appreciate and enjoy what happens to work.
Good job.
Are we going to get our slide projector out yet? So basically, what gardening boils down to is figuring out the conditions that you have and finding plants that like those conditions. Now, unfortunately, the catalogs that come in the mail to us and show us those fantastic pictures suck us in to thinking that we should be able to grow any of this stuff in any conditions. And it doesn't work, does it? But if you can learn a little bit about where a plant maybe is native, that will help to kind of, you know, find out if that's the type of condition you have. I mean, I'm sure a number of you are working with mature tree canopies. And so yes, paying attention to what happens in the native woodlands, you know, it tends to be a lot of flower show early in the season because that's when you have sun before the leaves are totally out. So really, you know, pumping up your gardens that time of year with color, with bulbs, with early blooming perennials. And then once you get that shade, then it becomes a subtler garden. Just like if you roam around in the woods come midsummer or late summer, there's not a lot of blooming plants on the forest floor there. So part of it is knowing what you have. We live in a lot of wide open spaces, and so we get, you know, a little bit broader view of, you know, some of that prairie stuff. Well, now we have a rearrangement here. We're quite a bit farther. Can you go back a little ways?
You think? We just lost that slide there. What did we lose?
Okay. Oh yeah, I think we're right. All right, this was a fun one. I had a customer about 10 years ago come to me, and she was a woman who probably was pushing 80 years old.
What's on her mind?
It ain't 80 degrees a day, is it? Anyway, and she said that as she continued to garden, what she found is that she needed more places to sit and enjoy her garden because she needed little rest times. And what she would do was, because she had gardened in the same place for many, many years, she learned what spots to position her little benches in, or chairs, or I think some of hers were just like stumps, because the light would be just right at a certain time of day. So I guess one of our messages for you today is to really take some time. Allow yourself places to sit in your gardens so that you can rest, and also so that you can, you know, have a chance to kind of appreciate what you have and see what you have. Because really when you do slow down, that's when you see stuff. And there is really a lot to learn and a lot to appreciate out there.
mentally back up a few slides to those pink chairs. They're in the middle of the garden. You're always welcome to come sit in them. But Lee and I we do dinner
Right.
out there half the evenings of the summer, you know, right surrounded by the garden. It's a real privilege. As gardeners, you probably know that feeling.
So I have spent more time in the last few years looking at our gardens and trying to find those sitting spots. And it can be just for one. It doesn't have to be where you're going to entertain or anything, just places that you really can appreciate what you have there in your yard. You can rent it for a while. Maybe it's my unluckiness.
We're going to move on to a little bit of some practicalities and thinking of some things we can say to an experienced group like this that
Yeah.
that could make a difference. And it's a hard one to do, but this next section is just a little bit about placing plants, and I think the biggest thing you can do, I've talked over my career a lot about soil improvements and things like that, but I've come to decide that if you just place the plants where they really want to grow in the first place, you're going to have a lot easier time gardening, and your plants are going to love you for it. So if you have a real thirst to grow these verbascums, by all means, put them in the sun, keep them on the dry side, and they're going to be happy. This is where they come from.
Other sun lovers are like the lamb's ear. I always kind of chuckle when someone brings me a plant that obviously needs full sun or pretty darn close to full sun, and I'll ask if they have sun, and when there is a pause, and I can just see their minds trying to think of how many hours of sun it might be, and they're trying to really not lie to me, but they're saying, oh, how about 4? And it's like, no.
So
Four
sun
is-
lovers love sun.
That's right.
And, you know, it's
6
folly to
hours
put
or
them
more
full
a
sun.
day would be full sun.
Shade lovers, of course, on the other hand, I don't know, sometimes that's a little bit more negotiable. A lot of plants can appreciate that in-between area, between shade and sun.
Well, and sometimes it's hard to tell when you're reading about a plant and it says part sun. Well, okay, part sun is, half and half or what? Well, things that say part shade, if they want some sun, it's better for them to have like an east exposure where they get morning sun but afternoon shade. If it says part sun to full sun, then that part sun should be afternoon sun or heat of the day kind of sun. So do you understand, things that say full sun, you could probably get away with it if they got a big chunk of afternoon sun. But if they got, if they want part shade, then you're better off to have the only sun be in the morning. Well, now at least we know how to run the projector down here to pull them out.
No? Okay. I was trying something else.
The bar in the center.
Yeah, my finger's too fat to get down in there.
Oh, good.
We dumped the whole tray and we're just gonna.
Yeah, we're going to
Lights up
forget
and
this.
talk.
That's right. Forget the slides and we'll go from there. Now I know why Beth said, oh, you have those old-fashioned slides when we came. Thought, huh. Okay, other
We're
shade
in
things. Other shade things then, some of the ferns. But certainly, yes, if you've got shade, if you've got mature trees, go with some of the things that would really normally grow there.
If you're under big deciduous or coniferous trees, there's this thing called dry shade, gives you a really short list of plants that'll grow in that condition. Or damp, woodland, moist shade is a much bigger list of plants.
Dry shade is probably the most challenging, or shade under conifers. Sometimes I suggest a bench. Something that really is not even a plant for under there. For wet conditions, things like primulas, the true primulas, they really like it wet. They like it boggy almost.
Absolutely. We've had people come in that wanted to know what they could grow in this awful, awful wet zone in their yard. And, oh, thank you. And,
Or they want to get rid of the wet zone. They want to tile it out or whatever. And actually, growing some of those primulas are fantastic in wet. I planted a number of them in our bog garden, and they're just doing fantastically. But if you tried to take a primula home and just put it on the west side of the house or the east side of the house, unless you have extra moisture, you're going to fail because they want wet breed. How many people have had trouble with the stilbes? You know, they say shade, you know. Well, a lot of shade is really dry. And astilbes, they literally like soggy feet. Now, here's the trick that someone, I wish I could claim this, but I don't. Somebody wanted to grow primulas out in more sun, or astilbes out in more sun. They took a little piece of pond liner, they dug a hole, they lined it with pond liner, they put all the dirt back in. No drainage holes, no nothing. So imagine that little zone, however big, you know, maybe just as big as this podium, no one knows but you that you've got this liner in there. That's going to stay wetter. Well, your astilbes are going to love that extra moisture there.
so, just like container gardening, you have, if that ever dries out, you gotta make sure it doesn't dry out. You'd have to, if we had an extended dry period, you'd need to.
But you could
apply
water that and it would stay wet a lot longer.
But we gardeners will figure things out.
But I thought that's a good trick if you want to
If
really,
you wanna grow wet-loving plants, by God, we're gonna do it.
you know, kitty litter pans, you could put anything down there. And it would be the next landowner that would be like, whoa, what is she doing?
This is actually a picture in the wild, but it's of some wet-loving plants that we know so well, Lobelia cardinalis and swamp milkweed. It was just a little backwater, river backwater that was full of these things for an acre or more. And, you know, they knew where to grow, and if you've got damp areas.
At least we have all the equipment here. Here. They're not going to have us back, Lindy. Not until we like upgrade. What other little tale can I tell them?
We got our tails in here coming up, but.
Yeah, see, he's pretty quick. You're not going to convince me that new technology is, or dry.
Oh,
These are a few
dry-
dry
dry
plants.
land,
So
sorry.
this is rose campion.
Um,
Let's just zip through some of these. And the penstemons. So basically wet, dry, sunshade. That's kind of the categories that we're working with.
But the idea, these plants we're showing you are just things that love those conditions. There's many, many more. Let me throw that up there for you. I should start sticking these in one by one.
Either that or I suppose we could just stick our table in the center and show it.
Where are we?
So basically gardening is an assemblage of plants. And the combining of the plants is what makes it kind of fun. So basically you think of things like height. You think of things like texture. And in all of this arranging plants, the contrast is the key, to try to make them varied by contrast.
So you can contrast the textures. This is why I think the grasses have become so popular, is because they have that textural contrast with all the common flowers, the larger flower forms.
So bold and airy, you know, just as far different as you can get.
That's even in these annual planting there. You can do fun things with annuals, we have to admit.
The other thing to pay attention to is flower forms. So, you know, again, to contrast those, to put daylilies, you know, in with spike things. These are also verbascum, a variety of mullein, to flat top flowers like the yarrow. So again, mixing those flower forms up to give you that interest.
heard that go. I know they're coming.
Sometimes when you have a gap that you're trying to fill in a garden, it's fun to, what was that? Yeah, it's like, okay, it's fun, you have a gap. It's fun to look at what's around it. You know, maybe you've got a daylily here because you can't kill daylilies, and maybe you've got yarrow on this side, to try to decide what to fill that gap with by looking first at what you have. So you'd want something a little bit different.
We lost one. But that's all right. Go ahead.
We've lost a.
No, we've seen those.
Okay. I guess we're down, well, see, we're always down to here.
Oh, good heavens.
Now we're back to talking about flower forms, I think. And this is Inula magnifica.
And it's just a daisy-like flower. I kind of categorize those plants. They're daisy-like, or they're spikes. They're balls, globes.
So again, trying to have a combination of these forms, just like you would put a bouquet together. This is Cranby cordifolia, which is kind of a fluffy, so the filler type of a plant. Then you deal with color, and color can really stymie people because you want to just, you know, have your white garden or your yellow garden or your blue garden, but in essence,
This is just petals, but it makes me know how careful gardeners watch their gardens. When a friend of mine was choosing plants for the way their petals fell.
he thought it was like popcorn at the theater, that the verbascum flowers fell off the. But really, you can't make a mistake with color. When you look at this, I mean, these are all the colors, all put together. And it really is indeed beautiful. So don't let that stop you for trying it. We always say that if you grow a plant well, if it's healthy and happy, it will be beautiful with whatever you have around it. Wow, I really like that one. This building is jinxed. Now, someone earlier said that this room had little hoodlums in it. I never had it stall before. Oh, I put that in wrong. My fault. So here's just a few examples of some combinations that kind of will illustrate these kind of disjointed points we've been making. So this is Allium albipulosum, or Star of Persia allium, with Digitalis grandiflora. So big ball-shaped flower, spike flower.
I like to point out two nice soft pastel colors, and you can't go wrong with stuff like this. Also look at like the secondary color. Of course, the hosta leaf is green with that yellow streak in the middle of this one, with that little yellow chartreuse blossom on the alchemilla.
The lady's mantle.
Is really a striking pickup, and when you can connect plants like that, you've got, you know, it just adds to the interest of that combination.
I always laugh that some of the perennial garden books and some of these over here love to have charts in them, and they'll arrange plants by their flower color. Well, the white coneflower in the front would be listed under white, but really that flower has a lot of gold and yellows to it, and so looks great with these kind of yellow yarrows in the back. So sometimes a plant that you like, if you look really close at it, it will help give you the idea of what colors would go with it.
Yeah, look at the middle of it. That's an orange. Am I Mike?
Can you hear them okay? And I like kind of applying these same principles beyond just ornamental herbaceous perennials, but even in our vegetable garden. So this is kind of a mixed garden in that I have the
Ailanthus down here in the bottom.
and then
Eyeball plant.
and Swiss chard with the different colored stems, but that kind of plays off that color of the eyeball plant. And then the fluffy annual grass matches kind of the whitish stems of the chard. So you have big leaf, little leaf, color that's not even a flower from the stem of the chard that kind of plays with the flower color of the Spilanthes. And you can apply the same principles if you do container stuff. These were hanging baskets, and one year I decided that I liked these hibiscus, and I wanted to try putting those in a container. Well, then I roamed around this greenhouse of a big annual grower up in the cities, and I carried those hibiscus around until I found something that had a very, very different flower, but still played with the color idea. So I found the lantanas. And then I found then it needed to have something kind of frilly, so I found the asparagus fern. So you can build them up by just looking for something, each step something that's a little bit different, but a little bit complementary.
So the message of that whole section is this, that contrast is the key. So when you're always looking for a plant to fill a hole, look at what's around it and look for something that contrasts.
We wanted to talk a little bit about some of the new developments in perennials in the last couple of years, and so we were really excited to have all of you here to tell us your experiences with some of these hybrid coneflowers now. We were fortunate, and it's probably been almost 10 years now, we went to the Chicago Botanic Gardens for a perennial conference, and they were doing all of these crosses between the different species of Echinacea that actually all of them are hardy for our zone. And so you can see in this photo they were bagging, they were hand pollinating and bagging and then saving seed and then growing out from
You've
seed.
been seeing the results of this breeding all over the charts and in the market these days with all kinds of different colored and different shaped coneflowers coming out. We would hope to hear back from you. I know the customer, the gardeners have had access to them for a couple of years now, and I want to know if you're having good luck or bad luck with them. We've had mostly good luck with them in our gardens.
But before we talk about the hybrids, we also want to talk about the merits of the species that they're working with. And this is Paradoxa, Echinacea paradoxa, and it is a lovely plant,
So
just as is.
This is a species. It's a native plant. It's not a hybrid of anything, and it's still lovely. They're playing with these things. Whenever we get anything like that coming down the horticultural pipeline, I always look back at the origins because I like a nice simple flower, and it's my personal preference.
So they're crossing this with the typical Echinacea purpurea, the regular purple coneflower, and then one Echinacea tennesciensis, which has a more cup-shaped flower instead of the petals that are hanging down more.
They bloom longer. This is a great plant, and it's not common in the market, but they've crossed it with some things to get orange or whatever, and suddenly they're all the rage. But look back and see some of these original plants, and you'll have fun with them too.
So then because of the resulting crosses, they're getting lots of really these kind of sunrise, sunset colors. They have a whole series, harvest, moon. So before we go farther, now how many of you tried them? And how many of them have they succeeded for you? My God, we're doing better than they are.
Right.
We have some ideas about how to work with it. Is it that they're just not coming back?
Pixie Meadow Bright,
Yep.
Oh, I've heard,
Cohen,
yeah.
Big Sky, Mango, gone.
Huh. Now, we've been suggesting, because they are hybrids, we've been suggesting, first of all, to deadhead them. When they're done blooming, deadhead them. Don't let them throw seed, because the seed is not going to still be the Pixie Meadow Bright or the Sunset, because all of us have regular purple coneflowers in our gardens, and so you're getting crosses already. So by cutting them back after they're done blooming, you're also going to beef up the root zone a little bit better, so that you might have more success with them overwintering from one year to the next. Yes?
I grew one that had extra petals coming out of the
Oh,
center
yeah.
of the cone at the top, and they grew like that one year, and the next year they didn't. It's the same plant.
And
Yeah.
I've heard that some of the double ones are really, it's not every flower that will do that, but a percentage. But now you're saying it did it one year and,
Well, some of them did it.
oh yeah, the second year. Right.
There's one out called Double Decker, and I know they say in my catalogs that it needs to be fully mature before you can be assured it's gonna, so I would bet on it having them again next year.
Well, and I would still bet that it's not going to be all of them next year. But the other thing we're suggesting is with these new ones to put them in places that aren't, you know, if you're one of those kind of live and let live kind of gardeners, and you think, well, I have to love all these coneflowers all together. Well, I can guarantee you those new ones are going to just fade away because that good old-fashioned purple coneflower is kind of a thug. And that thug is going to take, you know, it's going to take the space for it and its seedling volunteers. Because we actually, up our way, have had really pretty good luck with overwintering them and having good blooms. But we've kept them away from the other coneflowers, and we're deadheading them when they're done. So don't give up on them, but maybe think about it a little bit when you're putting them in place.
Have you tried the razzmatazz?
No.
I don't think so. That's another kind of double one, isn't it?
Big kind of a
Yeah, yeah. What I think is fantastic about them is I am very much a scent-oriented person, and some of these new coneflowers have an incredible scent to them that I wouldn't think of for, you know, purpurea doesn't have a smell, so. Yeah,
I've
wait a minute.
planted them in several different places, and they haven't died, but they just don't thrive.
The vigor is not, well, we're used to,
She's saying that,
yeah.
And even this last year with more rain, what I found was if you give them a little more water, they seem to do better.
Uh-huh.
They need a little more moisture.
They're the pampered hybrid kids, huh?
she started out by saying she planted them in several places, and our old friend Karen Strobene, we always would joke that, you know, they always used to say to plant 3, and we decided that was so that when one of them thrived, you move the other ones over there.
She would always plant in 3 different locations and then,
But here we have some close proximity to Echinacea pallida, another non-hybrid species, and I think they're just darling, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
but don't give up on them. I still think we, you know, we kind of, as a group, a gardening group, we need to kind of get the lowdown on how these are going to work. But like I say, Lindy and I in our gardens, we have fairly heavy soil, so it tends to have a little more moisture, and they've done
We have
okay.
more consistent snow cover, or do we?
I don't know, this year I think you guys are just as good. But it's a fun group of plants to see what's happening with. And when we were there touring their, just their research beds, oh my God, there were some
These are all just
incredible
numbered.
varieties. These don't even have names. I mean,
Yeah,
these
they're
were
just
these were
numbered-
seedling
numbered
volunteers that
hybrids.
they were just, doing the hand pollinating and then growing them out from seed and then seeing what they have, and then they would collect that seed. And so this was way early in the whole breeding program for them.
Echinaceas have been really going wild lately, market-wise, probably for good reason. Uh-oh,
There might have been.
oh yeah.
The next group,
Eucharis-
the next group we
Eucharis
want to
have
talk
gone
about are the
wild,
coral
too.
bells.
Um, That's a genus that has received an awful lot of attention lately. I think the growers are thinking they're the next hosta. Maybe they are. They certainly have some great flowering varieties that have tremendous flower stands.
This
on
is
them.
one that we've grown for a number of years called Florist Choice, and it really has absolutely fantastic flower stems, so easily to cut, and lots of them.
There's loads of these coming, and this is a
Green spice.
green spice. I swear there's a native species, Heuchera americana, that often has red in it like this. You'll find it in some of our Iowa native prairies, and has to be somewhat of an Americana strain. Nice
And-
stuff.
Lindy and I have always been very fond of a Heuchera villosa, which is, the leaves are a little bit bigger. They're almost fuzzy. And the cultivar that we've grown for many years was called Autumn Bride. There was also one called Purpurea, which was a purplish, more like the Palace purple color. And now in the last 3 years, and most of this research has been done in Europe, they have started to introduce some different villosa cultivars.
Well, the thing about villosa, I find, is they're incredibly vigorous. I get clumps like this, big bushel, half bushel basket-sized clumps of plant, and they're just tough as can be. They'll grow in partial shade to almost full sun. They bloom in the autumn.
Yeah, they bloom late, not like the
Well,
regular
And
coral
there was
bells.
always Velosa, and there's Velosa purpurea with a little reddish tint in it. Well, next thing we know, we're starting to see some that have
There's
been
one called
bred
caramel.
up that are a little darker and a little brighter. Caramel is a bright golden yellow leafed strain. And these are something I haven't even gotten good images of them for this purpose yet, so.
But those are worth it, or
do
even if you
watch
can
for
just
these.
find
There's-
Autumn Bride, that's a very reliable one. But it seems like some of the other ones, they've gone to naming them food items, like tiramisu, and so I'm not sure what all the cultivar names are, but that's one that we're also quite interested in.
Next are the Baptisias. Most of us got to know Baptisia australis, the big blue false indigo, as almost a thug in the garden. They get huge. They often, if it's especially in rich soil, flops over.
Hard to move because they have
And
big
then,
roots.
Deep root system, so they always say don't move it. But there's what is this, Carolinia?
Well, there are a number of species of these too. There's whites, blues, and yellows. And again, it's the Chicago Botanic Gardens who are doing hybridizing between those three species. And we're getting some very exciting kind of two-tone shades of those. And again, all of them are hardy for our zone, so that we really should be able to do it. Even the true yellows work for us up in Decorah. Let's see the next one. It shows.
Carolina Moonlight.
There is one called Carolina Moonlight. There's one called Screaming Yellows. But see now, this was one called Purple Smoke, which is kind of a two-tone white blue. There's a whole series now called Prairie Twilight or Prairie Blues, and they're kind of almost to the maroon color with then a little yellow two-tone that way. So I think all of these are worth trying, but you're going to need to allow them some space. They're not small plants like these little heucheras, don't take up so much room. But the Baptisias are going to be bigger.
So those are just some things to watch for. We think are coming. One last one, this is a personal love of ours, is Astrantia. For the zone between sun and shade, Astrantias are fabulous plants. They bloom a long, long time. They give us color in those semi-shady zones where we don't usually get an awful lot of bright flowering color.
And they're a plant that looks good a long time, even when it's really past its bloom time. That
As this
seed head
passes-
really is
passes
attractive.
bloom time, the bracts of the flowers stay kind of reddish. And so even past bloom, it looks quite nice.
So a lot of times in our garden, our flowers are everywhere, all around the perimeter. And kind of a fun way to record what we have at any one point in time was we did this little experiment, and certainly would suggest it to you. We sent, on a couple different days through our garden, we just picked one of everything and brought it together like this and took these great collage pictures. Let's see the next one.
Previously, you've seen.
Like that
some
first one
pictures
we
like
had.
And this is a hoot. If you are bored some summer afternoon, just take a basket, go around, pick some.
I would say, no, it's more like after you've been sitting in the chair for a while and relaxing, and then you look around, you think, yeah, I got enough. I could pick one of all of these things
We
and
would
then
always
do
do
this.
it late in the day when the crew was flagging, and we'd say, okay, grab a basket, and we'll go out and collect. And we made about one of these a month one summer and had.
But what a great record to show what's in bloom at the same
Yeah,
time.
This was everything that was bloom on that one given midsummer day.
And the next one, I always knew I had a lot of daffodils,
Oh,
but I didn't really know just how many different kinds I had,
this is coming. This is right around the corner.
It's probably there in Texas already, isn't it?
Yeah.
But again, what a fun way, and let me tell you, you get these out in the middle of January in a blizzard, it's fun to look at your flower slides.
I've also practiced a little. Lee is a much better journaler than I am, but I'm real visual, so I draw pictures. So this is a way that our memories aren't as good as they used to be, and so I write a lot of things down so I can, this time of year, I was drawing up plans for a garden just the other day, and I'm thinking, how am I gonna get bloom through the year? So I go back to my journal and I can look at these pages. I just made a date with myself every Sunday morning to go through the garden and make a little possible combination sketch. And then I list other things that might work, you know, so it's just a little checkup day that I'd go through the garden, see what looked good and what might.
You could easily do it with your digital camera or, I mean, you know, just a way to kind of record.
This way I could take plants that weren't even next to each other in the garden, and I'd say, oh, those would look nice together, so I'd make them that way on the page. Just a quick line sketch filled in with colored pencil, it's nothing fancy, but it's a way I can remember. And, you know, you have something like blue salvia back, you know, if I have a page in that journal of blue salvia, and it blooms so long, I just made a list of everything that was blooming simultaneous to it. It's most of the garden, so you can take a plant like that and combine anything with it.
Now we want to spend just a little bit of time talking about some maintenance strategies. And I often tell people that I'm a lazy gardener and that I have a whole lot of gardens to care for, so I don't have a lot of time always to putz. And one thing that I have learned that with some perennial flowers is that if you cut them back, they will bloom a second time. So hey, you know, isn't that a nice thing to know about? And so we have a few examples of that.
The short yarrows, I'll do it.
Yep. And I mean, when I cut them back to the ground. We're talking like an inch. So
None
it's
of
a little
this pinching out the
stubby.
tips. We just go out there with a head shear and lop them off at the ground. Blue salvia is famous for this. We cut it back.
And often, some of you probably have also seen that if you don't cut it back, blue salvia kind of likes to flop open.
Yeah.
So I don't like what that looks like, so just cut that back. I mean, you can really do it, yeah.
Nepeta, one of my all-time favorite plants. I just plant clouds and clouds of this purple stuff, and that too, midsummer, about the 4th of July for us, we mow it off, and in about 4 weeks, it's full bloom again.
The yellow foxglove, which is really truly perennial, is another one that you can cut back after it's done blooming, and then it will push some new leaf growth and then give you another round of flowers.
Let that one seed out, you know, make seed, and you're gonna have them
A gazillion.
everywhere. It's okay too, if you're trying to fill the garden up. There's another group of plants that a little bit more nuanced to the cutting back is this thing of extending the bloom time. And these are plants that mostly are taller, so that if I cut them back, they don't have time to grow all the way back up and rebloom. Maybe in a longer season they might. But what we do with something like a nice big patch of Monarda is I go in before it even starts to bloom, and I cut the first 1/3 to half off of the patch. I cut the front third of the patch off about to my knees. What that does is it makes it branch out and bloom a little later. So what happens then is the back of my patch blooms on regular schedule. About the time it's fading, the front part that had been cut back starts to bloom. And you essentially double the bloom time of a patch like this.
And it works great. It works great.
The hummingbirds, you know, they come up and thank us personally for doing that because they just love this stuff.
Well, and sometimes
there's
with-
other things that
yeah.
it works on. This is Nepeta sibirica.
A real
And
tall one.
I go through and cut a lot of this back. I've got a patch that's really full of it. It looks wonderful. It already is long blooming, but if I pinch a little of it back early, then when the main body of the bloom is almost done, I've got some fresh ones coming on. And it's a neat trick, because
yeah.
this one, you know, we have people go through our gardens every day of the summer. This is, once it starts blooming, it's almost always in bloom till frost then, and I have color in there the rest of the season. So neat trick.
Right. It's a Nepeta
Garden phlox,
sibirica.
common garden phlox work that way too. If you've got big masses of them, cut about 1/3 of them off before it blooms. And they'll just branch out and bloom a little later. You'll just increase your bloom time.
So everybody here promise they're going to try that this
More-
year
more
on their
weeks of
gardens,
color,
on
there's
something.
nothing wrong with that, is there?
right, on something do that.
Then there's all these plants you really don't need to do anything to, right? You can plant a bunch of Rudbeckia and run away and not look at them again. They take care of themselves quite well.
Because later they look just as good.
Oh yeah, we like them after the fact. We love them after the fact when they're dried little buttons out there in the winter landscape. So I made an arrangement the other day out of the garden. I used some pine boughs, and I used a lot of stilbee heads. We always leave those up because and one in particular was really kind of a cinnamon color and beautiful color this time of year. So that and some buff-colored grass head, ornamental grass heads and things like that. And you've got a really nice looking arrangement in the middle of February. Well, there you go. Leave those astilbes on, and they look nice through the snow. I think my garden looks good, even in this what we call that that leafless winter time. But with the grasses, with any of these stiff things that stick through the snow, I leave them on. And they look great. And if you think about that in your planting, you can have an awful good looking garden right through the middle of winter. We see these all the time, and that's this time of year is one of their strong points.
So
now
gardens,
here's the story.
yeah, gardens kind of, they feel good to us. They feed our soul, they feed our senses, and sometimes over the years, Lindy and I call it playing with plants. And we wanted to just share a few of our stories about plants and playing with them. And this is called Tina James Magic Evening Primrose. And a long, long time ago, I bought one of those seed packets of mixed wildflowers. And the first year, poppies came up fine, the California poppies. And then the second year, this plant came up. I had no idea what it was.
It's a biennial.
Okay, but it has these flowers that are about this big that open in the evening, just like you were watching time-lapse photography.
Yep.
Okay, it's just a hoot and a half to see them. Well, so I didn't know what it was, and I didn't know, I spent years trying to figure out. I knew it was an evening primrose, but which one? I grew lots of them. I always had to wait 2 years till they flowered so that I could find out that, yes, this was not the one that I was looking for. But growing Tina James, we would have little evening parties. We'd have friends over for these little soirees to watch these open. The plants are like this tall, and you stand with your glass of wine and you watch them open, and it's a hoot.
You can't watch one and not just burst out in laughter.
Yeah, it's just like, and it unrolls. The whole magic of it is incredible. So, play.
Yep. A plant deserving a party.
Another thing I like to play with is willow, and so I have had lots of fun making structures in the gardens over the years, and lots of different kinds.
These are temporary things.
And it's okay that they're temporary.
You can play around. You can do what you want with them. Next year they're kind of rotten. You throw them away, you start again.
They can make great dividers. They can, you can really have some fun with them. So think structure and play with that.
Sticks. You're all trimming your shrubs once in a while.
Then we had a great one year, the Cresco Master Gardeners in Howard County. They do a little thing at the county fair every year where they call them like angel crowns or something, or angel halos. And I copied the idea, and one day we did these floral crowns where we made a hoop. I did it with willow, of course. The Cresco folks, they just do it with wire and then cut flowers and wrap them on for the day. And we had quite the, we all became little kids again,
This will turn we had hundreds of people out this day, and it turned them all into children. It was just wonderful.
Isn't it great? Isn't it great? That this is what plants are supposed to do for us.
No holds
So if you have any event coming up, take this idea. It's a lot of fun. Oh yeah, then there's this story.
I neatly promised I could tell this one. You know Nicotiana? You know that it's night flowering. It's scented. This one
Beautiful
is extremely strong scented strain. And something though you can get through the seed savers. They grow it out for seed. It's an annual. And this whole sequence I'm going to show and tell you started one night. We were at the Seed Savers Summer Conference listening to the speaker in the barn, and we're always inspired by those things, but we came out of the barn when it was all over about 9 o'clock that evening, and you're on this little platform, and right behind there is a garden area where they grow out a lot of plants for seed production. And they had a whole bed of this Nicotiana out
was
there, and
incredible.
It just bowled you over. It was,
It was
so sweet.
incredible
There was
to smell.
So many of them. And Lee looked at me, she says, "Wouldn't it be fun to sleep out there?"
I said, wouldn't it be incredible to sleep among that
And,
scent?
well,
So,
we were gardeners, you know. So we planted a big square.
we didn't ask Seed Savers if we could sleep there that
No,
night,
no.
but
We
grew them
planted a
out the
big
next year.
square of Nicotiana and surrounded an opening. And
well, then
here. We, the year before, we'd had some friends over one night, and we all ended up in our sleeping bags out in the garden. But this night, we said, you know, the ground's kind of cold.
I don't want to sleep on the
And
ground in the
so,
Nicotiana
We've got a
patch.
little summer porch where we sleep in the summer out, almost outdoors. And so we just said, let's drag that mattress over there. So we brought the mattress over, set it up on some crates, and thought it looked fine. But then I got to thinking about the dew. And I had a easy up tent for the shows we do. And so
It became the Taj Mahal.
we set that up. But the remarkable thing of this is if you know the scent of that plant, we climbed in.
It was the
that
perfect
night,
height.
And you lay there in bed and you'd look out and you're surrounded by
Right, the flowers were right
Nicotiana.
there.
And it was very entertaining because, you know, the sphinx moths, the hawk moths,
We'll come to it.
come to it at night, and they
Right.
were just all around, going from flower to flower. And I don't know, I'm a gardener, and generally when I get horizontal, I'm snoring in about 2 seconds. So I watched that show a little while, but then I know I drifted off to sleep with the overriding thought of, could you succumb to fragrance toxicity?
Right.
It was so strong, so rich.
Yeah, it was unbelievably
I
strong.
could well imagine
We were like,
falling
would
prey
it-
to the fumes.
Would anyone be able to figure it out? Is what we.
So, you know, wouldn't that make a good garden mystery? You know? But a
Again,
rich experience if you have the space and no neighbors.
Well, and it was a fun little project to like, well, what if? And then I grew those plants out and we tried it. And actually a woman that worked for us that summer, when she showed up to work that day and saw what all we had done, she goes, you guys really sleep around. But it was wonderful, you know. And let me tell you, when it gets dark, the scent even gets stronger than what you think. So Lindy and I, a year ago, were in Hawaii for the first time. And oh my God, did I fall in love with leis.
They know how to do flowers.
You know, they do real flowers over there, and they're incredible. So I came home with the long lei needles and thought, how can we do Midwestern leis? And so this was one attempt that
Those
we
guys
did.
work pretty good.
These were Rosa rugosa.
But, you know, we're saying, go farther with your gardens and play with them a little bit.
Color has been fun to play with. These are in my, my sales area, but I know lots of folks, you know, an old door that you might use for a trellis or something, will play with some color. This year I actually expanded it to windows,
Yeah.
and if any of you come up this next summer, you'll see my windows.
There will be brightly colored windows throughout.
I wanted to put them all over the farm. And then this I'm waiting for the porta potty beautification project, and I'm going to win. You know, and I've been doing this for years. I have a whole series of slides just of my Porta-John gardens. So again, I like the fact that gardens can make us smile. They can make us chuckle when, you know, when we're out and about. And so we're hoping that we can kind of inspire you to, as this garden season comes, you know, what your ideas are and what you want to try. I mean, we always love to try plants we've never grown before, just to see what will happen, and growing a few vegetables that are new to us. And that's what really makes us anticipate and enjoy the season to come. And certainly consider this an invitation to come up to visit our gardens this summer. We'd love to have you. My annual garden this year, I think, is going to have kind of a tunnel theme to it, so I'm kind of growing vines, annual vines in a big way this year, to see what that's like. So,
And if you have questions still, please write them down and get them out to the end of the aisle.
yeah,
We'll
and
see
maybe
if
we
can
won't
pick 'em
take
up.
the break, we'll just go to questions right away. Is that okay, Ann, if we do that?
Unless they want to, we'll,
You know what, we can be
Pick them up.
informal. If you need a cookie right away, go get
sure,
it.
grab
Yeah.
a cookie. and-
Anybody else have one over there?
Tea?
Oh, boy, oh, yeah, I love these ideas.
You don't know.
Is she gonna read them? Oh. Thank you. She might have seen that Delphinium picture. Let's can this.
Let me turn the bulb down. Okay. And Ann, do you want us just to read them and go with them, or would you like to read them?
Would you prefer?
It doesn't matter to me.
Okay.
However you like.
Well, let me try it for a while. and
Okay.
If you don't like it that way, why don't I?
Okay, then I think you got to cheat and use this mic up here.
Do we have all the questions right now? Oh, a few more.
Well, a group like this, we could come up with a gazillion questions. We could have a great discussion. So yeah, we got about a half hour left that we can do.
We'll be okay.
When you're designing the garden, how do you decide to repeat the plants? Or do you?
Oh, yeah, oh, yeah. I understand. Are you
She's gonna read.
Yeah, unless,
No,
is it easier for you?
No, no.
No, no, we like it having you there.
Okay, okay. Okay.
Well, again, thanks for sticking it out through that.
Yeah, we apologize
AV
for the
challenge.
technical difficulties.
Actually, I think you're
Okay.
pretty cool. I think many of us in this room have experienced the same dilemma, but we didn't do it with quite the aplomb that the two of you did.
Well, it was good that there were two of us.
Oh. So we'll get started with the questions, and if you want to move back and get a bit of refreshment as we go, why we will be
Sure.
efficient with the use of our time. What do you use for mulch in your new beds, or even you could expand that to your established beds?
Is that mine?
I think that's yours. I live with a man who likes to cultivate.
Yeah, I don't think mulch is absolutely necessary, though we generally do put mulch on a new planting, just to save us a little work and hold a little moisture in. But I truly feel that on a perennial border especially, when it's really established, I don't really want to have room for mulch. I get them so full of plant stems, they're full. So an old established part of our gardens, we hardly have room to get in and cultivate, let alone get a shovel full of mulch in there.
But a new planting, because you want to plant with anticipating the mature sizes, you're going to have bigger spaces in between. And for that, we have always liked using an organic mulch like shredded bark, composted shredded bark, something like that. We don't use any of the ground fabric stuff.
The rule of thumb is anything that'll break down, feed your soil. you
Right.
know. So
Right,
you have some straw, have some old hay, I don't care.
yeah.
Old hay, stuff like that might have seed in it, put it on thick enough. But we happen to live in northeast Iowa, there's a lot of sawmills, and so tree bark, shredded tree bark off the logs is readily available.
And I know some people are, the community composting sites also are a source of some chipped kind of
Right.
material or.
If I had my first choice, it would be finished compost, fresh finished compost. Because if it's truly been composted, it's been hot heated, you know, to a, you know, I think if you're up near 200 degrees, you're gonna be pretty seedless. And that's easy to do in a hot compost bin. So,
Do you
But-
do your own composting yourself?
yeah.
He
Yeah.
got a new toy for
Oh,
his
I got a new
compost
turner.
pile this year.
But, you know, you don't need all those toys to make compost. You just need nitrogen and carbon, moisture.
We could have told
Time.
that story.
What'd you get?
Oh, no.
Oh, he got a little mini manure spreader, you know, like they sell for people with 1 or 2 horses, but we don't have any horses.
But,
He's going to use it
It's
as
to
a
turn my
chopper
compost through
upper.
it. It's kind of a folk method of doing it, I guess, on a larger scale than most homeowners. Because I don't believe anybody should be allowed to get rid of any 1 ounce of organic matter.
Off
you
of your
know.
lawn. Why do we, you pay to get rid of it and then we go to the store and bring back,
I know in here there was a question about composting leaves. Should we just go to
Yeah,
that?
yeah.
Sure.
I used to, when I was, a few years back, I had a crew and we did landscape installations. I've kind of gone past that now, but I would always tell those guys in the fall never to come back to the farm without a load of leaves. Because everybody was bagging them up, putting them on the curb. They were so easy to get, so we'd load the trailer and truck up and bring them home, and I would make mountains of leaves. But you need, the best thing is to have some grass clippings in with those, maybe if you pick them up with the lawnmower.
So
'Cause
green.
You need something green in there to add the nitrogen, and then it's just a matter of getting them moist enough so they start heating up. Yeah, and the best way for a big pile on that is to flatten them all out and put a sprinkler on them. It's unbelievable how long you have to wet them to get them to really get soaked.
To
So
start that
Spread the
decomposition.
pile out, put a sprinkler on it for maybe 4 or 5 hours, and then you're gonna have a damp pile and pile it back up and it'll heat up for sure.
And then get one of those thermometers. It's really interesting to really see
yeah.
how it does heat up. And you can, follow that. And once it starts to level off and drop, then it's time to turn it again, and it'll heat up
If you get
again.
them up to 200 degrees, you can cook in them.
We had a compost pile. We used to live in a little county park, and we had this fantastic compost pile. And Lindy would put
Lots
a
of
little,
horse manure.
yeah, a little black poly over it, and that's how I wanted to do winter camping. It was kind of like, well, you camp out there down the river. I'm just going to put mine right on top of the black plastic compost pile.
100-degree pile there.
Okay, this is another question more to the perennial plants. I've tried planting lupin several times, but it always
Yeah.
dies before blooming. Is it
Oh.
just not suited to this area, or do you have a secret?
Well, lupins is one plant that actually farther north is better. And so here in Iowa City, you are in that kind of limbo land, that soil temperatures get too hot. I would think you would, I guess if you're growing them from seed, they wouldn't really bloom till the second year. So if you're losing them over the first winter, that would explain that. Lindy's parents lived for a while in North Texas, and we grew bluebonnet, which is in that same family, but that is more like a true annual flower. And so that may be what you need to do here. Because even for us, they're not overly long-lived. We need to let them reseed themselves to
Yeah,
really...
I've known people that had big patches of them up the Coraway, but
Not
you need
many
to
down here.
absolutely constantly encourage them to reseed.
Mm-hmm.
Young plants can thrive and bloom, but one single old existing plant won't live very long.
And I can guarantee that whoever's trying this has been on the North Shore of Lake Superior and seen them growing in the ditches, or in Norway, or all of these northern climes where they really do like that set of conditions.
They like it cool, gravelly.
Okay. This is the same person with another question. A friend of mine in New Jersey has a tie-dye rudbeckia that is basically variegated color on one plant. I haven't been able to find it in this area. Do you have it?
Variegated leaf or
I think
Petal.
it sounds like petals to me.
Variegated flower, variegated petals. Flower.
And it could be, there are some, there are some Rudbeckia, like Gloriosa daisies that have that kind of different
That
look.
looks tie-dyed to me.
But for us, that's really an annual, not a true perennial. Now hers comes back in New Jersey.
It could
Yeah,
even
when are you
here.
visiting next? Yeah, like when it's small, right? There is another one
Try
that,
Gloriosa daisy.
yeah. Yeah, there isn't, I haven't ever really heard one called tie-dye Rudbeckia, so that I'm kind of scrambling to try to figure out what species it really is. But yeah, maybe she can ship one out
Well,
to you.
have her
You
send
know,
you some seed off of
Yeah,
it.
well, there, and grow it from seed.
This is a common problem. One of my gardens extends from a mid-sized maple. Even
Ah.
beyond the reach of the branches, there are roots near the top. Is it
Uh-huh.
okay to plant around those roots? Any recommendations about what would do well? It does get afternoon sun.
Ooh.
Late afternoon.
That-
And now the maple's getting bigger too, I
The roots of the
bet.
maple are fibrous and very efficient at sucking up all the moisture. I'm sure I'm not telling you anything new there. So growing something under there is very hard. A short list of my favorite absolute dry shade plants for ground cover would be wild ginger.
Oh, yeah, yeah, we have had good luck with that.
If I go up to the high rocky parts of my own woodland on the farm, it's these plants are growing out of limestone rock with a lot of tree root in the soil, and they just love it. They thrive. So look to the woodland wildflowers that would grow on the highlands like that.
And closer to the tree, this is where the sculpture garden needs to be,
Well, or
you know, or,
bench.
right, this is where you need to not even
But-
try to grow.
Yeah, certainly
Much
don't ever
under
try
that.
to add soils over that. The roots will just grow right. You could damage the plant, but also the roots grow up into it within a year.
And the other thing
Waste
is, if you
time.
go into a maple forest, you know, again, thinking of the plant in its natural setting, there's
not
the
much
only
there.
thing that will grow underneath a maple like that are more maples.
Well, or
You know, I mean, evolutionarily, that's kind of how it works
mayaples
with
and
them.
hepatica.
Right, right.
One other plant I have used, and we do grow, that
Oh, yeah.
gets big, is Aurelia racemosa. It's American spikenard.
Yeah.
Grows up about shoulder high, and I've had really good luck with it. It's a native woodland plant, and it is quite happy in that dry, shady zone.
But you're still going to want to be, you know, closest to where you're out from under that
Yeah,
drip
way
line.
back up by the trunk. It's a really big challenge.
Okay, after a tornado, I lost 4 shade trees. What would you
Ooh.
do to rescue a hosta garden? Fast-growing shrubs or what else?
Shade cloth, which maybe they already did for, yeah, you guys had that whopper storm, didn't you? Lindy and I had a shade garden that went to full sun in 45 minutes one day, you know, many years ago. And so fortunately, our soil was fairly heavy and we had space enough to move our hostas, you know, over 2 years it took us to actually get them all out of that place. And now we laugh because trees that we subsequently planted have gotten big
It's
enough that it's
shady
kind of
again.
back to being shade in that original place. But
It's not out of the question. There are some fast-growing
Right.
species you could plant fairly densely if you absolutely promise yourself to take them out when they get too big. I could see a scenario where you planted a few good long-term slow-growing trees, but then plant some fast ones in between. And you could get shade in a few years.
now see, I would
out of-
take it as an opportunity and start growing the sun stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
And so you
But
have
if
to
you had-
decide
say,
what
it
priority
depends
you
on the
want.
situation. If you had like to die for a collection of shade plants, you could get shade back on that within a couple of years, and I think the plants would survive it. They're not gonna be happy late summer.
I might think of an interesting pergola with shade cloth.
Anyway.
Do you ever
it's a hard-
recommend interspersing, or do you intersperse shrubs and ornamental trees within your perennial
Absolutely, a garden
gardens?
is a mixed affair, and
But you'll find that, I mean, the shrubs will grow and your, you know, some of your perennials, the spaces are
They're gonna
not as
suffer.
big as they used to be, and they will suffer a little bit with the competition of the roots of the trees and shrubs. So it will have an effect.
But there's been a long-held adage that says, plant thick and thin early, as far as tree planting goes. And so that's where I'd go.
Okay. On to fern peonies, but maybe this would
yeah.
apply to peonies in general, I don't know. How to move them and when, and do they always require full sun?
Somebody who's got a
Yes.
shady yard, who's gonna try to squeeze grandma's fern peony in there.
Yes, they should have full sun. They should be moved in the autumn when their leaves
Dormant.
yellow.
And fern peonies go dormant a little earlier than regular peonies, and so you could actually move them even
probably.
probably anytime in August. I mean, basically, the foliage is gonna be gone. And then, as with all peonies, when you
The eyes.
Yeah, when you take the soil away from the roots, you'll find, where the new growth is going to come. They call that an eye. And the eyes you don't want to plant too deep, or peonies will not flower for you. So for us, the eyes get placed about an inch below the soil line is all. So come August, I would move it. Regular peonies, we usually always say Labor Day, or
Labor Day or
after is when to lift and move those. So if you've got, say, a peony that now the trees have grown up and you have much more shade and maybe it doesn't bloom as well as it used to, it would be a nice thing to think about moving that. And I would say as much sun as possible for the fern peony.
Give some good advice for growing those healthy delphiniums that we saw in your pictures.
Yeah.
That's another one you have to really revel when they work well.
I have a prepared talk called the Delphinium Sermon. And you're probably gonna hear that. Delphiniums are what I call the ultimate high maintenance plant. They require a lot of tending.
They
so if
like
you're-
compost.
If you're looking for increased activity in your garden, they're great.
We have a friend who he only likes to garden with plants that he can fret about.
Yeah.
Well, these
Yeah.
you can
So,
fret.
They're heavy. They're hybridized to the max. Think of it. There are not many flowers in the wild that have 7-foot spikes of flower. So they've just been hybridized to do that. So they really have more flower than they ought to. So you need to intervene, and as the grower, you're part of the system here. So they're heavy feeders. They like lots of food. They don't like to dry out fully. So don't, monitor the soil and don't let them ever get too dry. Feed them constantly.
They are typically grown from seed.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
very often do you do divisions on delphiniums.
Well, you can buy a plant, but those are all grown from seed generally.
And so you plant
so-
that plant.
If you're planting a plant, enrich the soil as much as possible, but then continually feed too.
Top dress with compost.
We met a woman that came to our garden who said that growing up, it was her job to make a little bucket of manure tea weekly and apply to her grandma's delphinium bed. That's the kind of thing they can put up with. Well, if you do that, you're going to have fabulous growth, and they are certainly able to grow better than they should. I don't know if that makes sense, but what happens is the scenario is most people plant them, they don't do a lot the first year, you might get a bloom stalk or two. The second year, they've grown this big root system and they push up 12, 15 spikes all at once. And since they're super hybrids, their flowers are huge and they zap themselves. They take all their energy out of the plant root and put it into flower.
I say they bloom themselves to death.
And they can actually die from it. They'll consume all their own inner energy. So I have this practice where I will plant a delphinium and I'll feed it and keep it watered, and I'll not allow it to bloom for the whole first year of its life in the garden.
And as a
So-
gardeners, you know that makes some sense because it'll work on making leaves. Leaves photosynthesize, that stores roots, so you'll get a bigger, better root
Our
system
objective is to grow a great big root system.
before you let it flower.
After that time has passed, you'll have this enormous mound of foliage, and you want to keep an eye on that. I then, from there on, I allow only about 3 blooms at a time to blossom on each plant. So this means I go through the bed once a week and pinch out dozens and dozens of flower
Yeah, they're
buds.
not liking that, I can tell. We've heard that noise
I
before.
just pinch
They're
them
not
and leave them
liking
on the
that.
ground, but it's a hard thing to do, isn't it?
But again, it makes some sense that if you can limit the flowers but still have this big root system, it can support it better.
You can watch,
has
I said,
that
watch
energy.
that plant, because if I let 3 bloom, you can see the leaf structure decrease a little bit. It's, you know, but if I let 10 bloom, those leaves are gonna disappear. All that energy is gonna go up that stem.
Right.
So, limit the number. If you've got a huge, huge healthy plant, I still probably never allow more than 5 blooms on a plant.
And my advice for delphinium lovers is budget every year to buy 3.
Yeah.
And
Buy
some
more.
years you'll have all your returns, still buy 3. And then, you know, so you're always are going to be needing to add, but some years will be better than others as far as how many will survive. But over the long haul, it's a fussy thing to get a good
If you
show.
wanna grow
from-
your own from seed, they like the moist chilling.
Yeah,
So, you know,
they're not hard to grow
they're
from
not
seed.
hard, you just have to stratify the seed.